Welcome to the Real Advisor Podcast, TRAP, TRAP. Please follow us and join in the conversation on Twitter @Advisor Podcast, where you can suggest ideas and themes you'd like the TRAP team to discuss. Also remember to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel and leave a 6 out of 5-star review on iTunes. Doing all this really helps us, which means we can do more to help you. Now let's head over to the studio for the latest pile of TRAP.
Yes, indeed, dear Trappist. Welcome back to what many people are calling episode 27 of the Real Advisor Podcast, TRAP, TRAP. My name remains Lick Ninken, and joining me as ever are the three other horsemen of the apocalypse, Andy Hart, Alan Il Narratore Smith, and Carl Della Voce Widger. Now, gentlemen, we have a show packed full of absolutely nothing, so let's start unpacking it straight away with some more high-energy reviews.
Chariots coming for to carry me home. Swing low. All right. Anyone see the rugby at the weekend? Anyone see the rugby? Carl, did you see any rugby at the weekend?
I saw a little bit, but what I did actually see was the Rugby World Cup, or the rugby rankings. So
yes, fascinating. Wow. Few movements there.
Very, very proud moment for Ireland to maintain their number one status going into the World Cup.
Congratulations. Well
very
done.
much.
How are you number one? How are you number one the way you're playing?
12 wins in a row and all that kind of stuff.
You've beaten England. That's not a win. Anyone can do that.
The series win in New Zealand. Grand Slam. Anyway, the list goes on. I won't
it's time for the jingle, Nick.
Yeah.
Ireland.
Interestingly,
right, let's get back on track.
Interestingly, though, back on track on the Rugby World Cup rankings. So England are number 8, Nick.
I know.
Now below Fiji. And just for our listeners,
are you looking at the sevens rankings or the 15s?
No. This is just this. It's okay. There's no big tournament starting anytime soon, so it's not important.
Not taking the Six Nations group WhatsApp slagging very well, are you, Nick?
I think I'm taking it wrong. I've given an unresigned. You can say what you like, mate. I agree with you. I have no defence. I have no defence of England whatsoever. So have at it. I'm looking forward to seeing Ireland hoist the World Cup.
Not exactly what you said in the WhatsApp group last night, but anyway, we shall see. I did, however, watch South Africa play New Zealand and demolish New Zealand, including bringing on exactly seven new forwards after 45 minutes. And the 7 new forwards were better than the 7 old forwards.
Fresh legs times 7.
Wow. My God. So first time ever a 7 forwards and 1 back split was done. Everyone said it's madness.
That 7 off the bench would start for most teams.
Razzie knows what he's doing. For me, watching the rugby, South Africa have to be hot favourites.
Yeah,
and
very hard to beat.
Unfortunately, they're in our group. And even if we do get out of the group, we have to play either France or New Zealand. So I think doing the draw for the World Cup 3 years prior to the World Cup is absolute madness.
It's ridiculous, isn't it?
Yeah. Agreed.
Australia and Wales
Gentlemen,
are even worse than England.
We're 4 minutes in, and
they're top seeds.
Yeah. Right, because England aren't going well. We need to move on. Okay, right, no problem.
I've given you 4 minutes to enjoy your peak form before a World Cup. I'm looking forward to the Irish slump that always happens during a World Cup. Okay, Andrew, some high-energy reviews of the show, please, that don't involve rugby.
Okay, I'll try and avoid rugby. Number 1, 5 stars from Rob Nick. Keep it up, guys. You are bettering the IFA sector 1 episode at a time. When a new pod drops, it's an immediate listen, 6 stars. Next up, MJ Financial Planning, concise, informative, and considered listen, 5 stars. I decided to listen to the podcast for the first time this week, primarily because of the subject matter being SJP. I've been in financial planning for over 30 years, but I've only had a practice with SJP for the past 4. During that time, I've listened to and read countless defamatory comments made towards SJP, so when I saw the subject matter of this podcast, I was expecting much of the same. It was therefore very refreshing to hear logical conversations about SJP, and I found myself being very much in agreement with all of the points raised, good and bad. This concise, informative and considered listen is now clearly marked on my podcast favourites to download each week, and look forward to listening to many more in the future. Back to you, boss.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Thank you as ever for your reviews. They do give us a shot in the arm. Yeah, a shot in the arm is what the England, well, a shot in the head actually for the England rugby team. Okay, we have, as TRAP, as the Real Advisor podcast, somehow scraped our way to 50,000 plus downloads. In fact, we're now at about 65,000 downloads, which is pretty remarkable for a niche podcast aimed at a very specific audience that only comes out once every 2 weeks. So just thank you to all the TRAPists. And we've also got, I think, 13 odd thousand views on YouTube as well, which is fantastic, if not a little bit bizarre. So I just want to say thank you. And as ever, just a reminder, next year, around episode 50, so it'll be July-ish kind of time, 2024, where we're looking to do, Christ knows how we're ever going to get this organised without killing each other, but we're going to do a trap live event of some sort. And there is significant interest out there to do. We have tested the waters on this. So that will be happening. So just keep an eye out for that as we get nearer the time. Okay, let's start with some good news, because it is easy to get mired in negativity sometimes in what we do in financial services, because we feel sometimes as financial advisors, certainly as real financial advisors, we kind of get dinged from all corners. But I've got some good news, and it seems that yes, feel the vibes, baby. Feel the vibes. Hug that tree. 3 questions. Get the clients crying. Okay, back in the room. That the FSCS and the FCA fees, Carl, this is not you may be able to comment on this as well from the Irish perspective, but across the board, the levies are hitting our emails, and they seem to be down by around a third, which is very good news. And we'll certainly take that. Doesn't mean the FCA can't hit us with interim levies, but in our experience and with the peer group that Andy, Alan and myself belong to, the Ideas Exchange, that seems to be the common theme, that the fees are down by a third. So don't necessarily need to comment on that, gentlemen, unless you wish to, but it's nice to be able to report some good news out there. Long may that continue. The Voice. Wodgemeister, Zoom is asking employees to return to the office, which I find sweetly ironic. Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, well, look, from a PR point of view, first of all, I think that's a little bit of a disaster that news on that gets out. So the main COVID-19 online messaging forum, Zoom, has said that this whole working from home thing doesn't work. So that was kind of interesting, and I think they handled that PR-wise from a very poor point of view. But I was in a big tech firm in Dublin a couple of weeks ago, and they were telling me that they've also insisted that everyone comes back to the office with an optional 2 days working from home based on hitting KPIs. So, look, it seems like the working from home thing, certainly for the bigger corporations, doesn't seem to be working. I know there's kind of different viewpoints in this group about that. But I've always had the view that, look, yeah, we need to be kind of grown up about it and give people an option of a day or so from home. And we do have, maybe one team member entirely remotely. But my strong thoughts on this are that you got to be in the office, like especially when you're a kind of a small, medium-sized firm. That the whole team ethic, learning from each other, those infamous water cooler moments, they actually do matter. They do work. So I think it's nice to kind of get some confirmation from bigger firms out there that maybe this is a thing, and maybe it's the slow death of the working from home.
Let me come in, if I may, on that one. I've seen this. As Nick said, sweetly ironic that Zoom, the big brand behind the work from home, and telling everyone to get back into the office, as are many others. Interesting, isn't it? There's a lot of the big tech companies that are saying this. Tesla's talking about it, Twitter, Google, all these big companies are to getting everyone back. So my take on this is that it's kind of immature of the management of the organization to demand this. It smacks of kind of I question the culture in an organization that has to insist on its employees and where they actually work from, where they do their best work. So I just take the view that people should identify what sort of work they are doing in a particular day, a particular week, and find the best location to deliver that work. Some work is best done in a collaborative format in an office environment amongst other people, and some is absolutely best done in the quietest place you can be. If that's home, or somewhere else, then that's what you should do. So we remain very flexible on our sort of working practices, and people tend to come in the office probably 2 days a week on average, and work from home the rest of the time, or work from somewhere else. And it seems to work. In our line of work, I think it's very your outputs are very known. You're expected to do certain things. You've got client meetings in the calendar. You've got things to deliver upon. And it's very difficult to avoid that. So my view is treat people as grown-ups and let them do what they want.
Yeah, I valid points, Alan. And what I would say in that is, look, I suppose we've a lot of new starters happening already have happened and will be happening over the next few months. I think for starters, it's really difficult to kind of train someone in and bring them into the culture of the business when they're doing it from home, number one. Number two, I would say in Ireland, we're definitely not at the levels of online client meetings that you guys are at. I think that's actually a good thing. And that means obviously we need to have people in the office for those client meetings. And, we don't, we have always two people in each client meeting. So look, there's pros and cons. I haven't entirely made up my mind on it, but I'm comfortable with what we've kind of landed on, which is a semi-flexible outlook. And that's what we will continue to do.
I'm a massive fan of the flexibility that obviously it allows us. Before this call, I had a meeting with my accountant, and I just thought I'm probably never going to meet my accountant face to face again. And he lives in London, and I used to see him face to face quite a bit.
It's a win-win.
It's a win-win for both of us. The hybrid is fantastic. So 2 days in the office or 3 days in the office. I think employees couldn't ask for anything better. It's a big challenge when you're onboarding new staff members remotely. Yeah, that's I suppose the biggest challenge. But once they're sort of bedded in and they know everybody, it's given them that flexibility. Obviously, again, clients. A new client contacted me the other day and said he wants to potentially become a client. However, he wants to meet face to face. And I said, "Oh, can we not do it by Zoom?" And he said, "Oh, yeah, it's fine doing it by Zoom." I was thinking, I didn't quite know what he was up to. Anyway, I find it way more efficient, especially in London. It is challenging if you've got a couple that both have jobs and kids, and I've taken on loads of clients during the COVID times, and I plan to never ever meet them. And I know Nick's pretty much 100% Zoom. So yeah, it's interesting that Zoom are insisting on some of their employees being a bit more present in the office. I'm pretty sure they weren't saying 5 days, but they were certainly sort of trying to ratchet it up. That is the general sort of flow, isn't it? Companies are insisting that more time is spent, in physical offices. So yeah, interesting. Back to you, boss.
Okay, good stuff, Alan. Just while we'll keep this in the show, but just check your speakers, yeah, because I've got your speakers coming up as the real tech. So your headphones might not be your active speakers. So if you can mute yourself and sort that out, we'll crack on with the conversation. So, okay, news item that I saw, which just kind of blew my mind, really, especially for we call ourselves the real financial advisors, right? The Real Advice Podcast, because we think that financial planning is paramount. And the investment solution is just the end result, isn't it? It's not what we're about. It's just one of the moving parts. And so all of us, and I think a lot of the Trappists who listen to us have kind of refined and honed our investment proposition over the years to really cut back on the number of funds we're offering, to have streamlined portfolios that give you broad global exposure. And the Trappists, and you guys know that I've taken that to the nth degree. Now I have the one fund for my equity exposure. And I saw this article in New Model Advisor, and I had to kind of look at the headlines twice. And Scottish Widows is cutting 180 of its life and pension funds. It's not, and I had to look at it and think, do you mean they're cutting some of their 180 life and pension? No, they're cutting 180 pension funds, leaving behind God knows how many. And a lot of these, of course, are mirror funds. There'll be the X Standard Life GARS range, which there were loads of different iterations, but 180 life and pension funds. I mean, to have that many to cut in the first place, it's just a different world out there, isn't it? The old school industrial manufacturing side. Imagine you're an advisor and you're trying to, you've got a client with the Scottish Widows pension, and you're in 40 or 50 funds or something, and you're trying to justify your existence. I mean, just brought it up because it just seems to be such a contrast to how a certain segment of the advice community is moving, e.g., what we would call in quotes real advisors, which I know gets people's heckles up, but we don't particularly care about that. Guys, there'll be a link. There's a link to that in the so-called show notes, that CityWire article. But nuts. And something else that I thought was nuts is capita. Now, no one seems to have a good word for capita. And just nod or shake, Carl. Capita exist in Ireland? Are they? Okay, well, capita are one of these sort of scheme. DB scheme trustees / actuaries / admin, and they just uniformly get slagged off by anybody who comes into contact with them. Anyway, it turns out that capita, a few years ago, when the transfer value market from DB to DC was all the rage because transfer values were very high, capita, being capita, cocked up the transfer values on quite a number of these transfers and paid away too much. And they're now actually going to these people, to the people that receive these DB transfers, and saying, we need some of the money back. Now,
good luck with that.
good luck with that from fair. Now, I haven't looked. I don't know the weeds about this. I don't know how you get the money back. I mean, because obviously you might have say you've got £1 million in a pension, but 10 quid in your bank account. Well, does the money come back out of the pension? And what if the pension is gone? What if it's tied up in property? What if it's in some some dreadful Cape Verde scheme that's actually lost all its money since then? I just don't know how they can do it. Surely Capita have their version of professional indemnity insurance that covers them against these kind of cock-ups. You can't go back to people 3, 4, 5, 6 after the event and say we gave you too much. It just seems to me that's an incredible story. And it's not like, this is not like one or two. This is apparently hundreds and hundreds. And it's not just Capita as well. I don't know if you guys have got any thoughts on this or have had any other, spoken to any other IFAs, but the whole DB to DC thing was a bit of a shit show anyway. It's turning out to be a bit of a shit show anyway. But you throw this into the mix and it's like, wow. And of course, Capita being Capita they're writing to these people and saying, talk to your advisor about this. They're trying to shunt it back onto the advisor to say, inferring, was the advice correct? Because we cocked up the transfer value, as if advisors are supposed to understand how transfer values are arrived at. I mean, that's proper smokes and mirrors stuff. Okay, voice again. Sports stars start a VC fund.
Yeah, I just saw this. This is actually on Sky News. So I've put the link to this piece of news. So there's kind of a couple of cricketers who you guys probably know who they are, but there's footballers and there's other sports stars. They've started this VC fund and they're going for early kind of tech startups and I think wellness startups, that kind of stuff as well. And it just reminded me of our previous discussion whereby I think the rules were changing there, that people, that your regulation said that you should be investing in kind of VC funds and that kind of stuff. And I just thought back to, there's so many stories from kind of famous people, sports stars, going into investments that have gone pear-shaped. And I think the ones that you'll see in the news are probably famous footballers predominantly. But, going back to real financial planning, it doesn't really matter how much money you have. What you need is a financial plan to tell you how much money you need. And you need to dedicate your resources then to investments, pensions, whatever, in what has always worked. And we have spoken before about having that kind of playpen for, very wealthy people who go off and do some stuff that kind of floats their boat, shall we say, but it's not integral or it's not that important. So it's money that where they don't want to lose it, but you could necessarily lose it. And I just hope that all of the sports people who have been named in this all have their own financial plans and they're only putting in money that they can afford to lose in this, because this is high risk stuff. And it doesn't matter how famous you are. If you're investing in early stage startups, they unfortunately have a propensity to not return any money. Of course, you could be lucky and shoot the lights out. And that's what playpen money is. So look, it's just a note that I thought I'd put out there, because too often we come across maybe ultra wealthy people, stroke famous people, and they're doing stuff that just doesn't make any sense. Nick,
interesting. I mean, last week you and I, Carl, we went out for a sherry, didn't we? And in that day, I met one of them. You met two IFAs who specialise in the field of advising sports people, who have this incredibly short incredibly short careers with incredibly loads of money. It's a different way of doing what we do, and that's for sure. Interesting people, and the classic example of just be careful what you're doing, and have you got a financial plan, and why on earth you're doing this is I know you guys aren't into American football, but you know of Tom Brady, right? Who is the greatest quarterback to ever play the game, and it's not even close. And he, had this idyllic lifestyle. He was married to Gisele Bundchen, and he's got more money than he could possibly ever spend, and yet he got involved in promoting Bitcoin, or one of these Bitcoin funds, I believe, in the States.
FTX.
Yeah, FTX money he didn't need, and now he's being, litigious Americans. He's kind of being countersued by people who went into it. And now whether he'll lose money, I don't know. But he didn't need to do it. It's just like your brand is everything. Your reputation is everything. Just why? It's the magpie thing. It's the shiny new thing. I want to be seen. We want this guy to be the face of it. Agent says, "Will you do it?" Tommy goes, "Yeah, I'll do it." And then of course when he doesn't know what he's talking about. Really, he's just a pretty face.
Look,
right.
The fundamental challenge, Nick, is confusing, long-term strategic investing for sort of personal financial security. For growth of wealth, confusing that with entertainment. And these people come from the world of entertainment. And whether it's sports stars, movie stars, you name it, that's the world they operate in. And the challenge that we've got, the challenge we will always have is, frankly, the work that we do, to the outside world at least, is dull. It's pretty dull. Because who wants to build a plan? That in itself is pretty boring. And also, I've sort of dabbled over the years, not for a long time, but in the world of professional sports people, and trying to get professional sports people to consider a 30, 40, 50-year financial plan. Those people don't know what they're doing tomorrow. Never mind 30 years from now. So it's a challenge. It's a real challenge. And of course, when you say we'd like you to invest your money in low-cost global index funds and leave it there for 30 years, it's just, what? That's just boring. I want to get crypto. I want to buy, watches is all the thing, trading, high-end watches, all that sort of stuff. And so it is a perennial challenge that anyone who works in our game has, dealing with anyone like that. And the last little anecdote I'll throw in, I spoke to somebody last week who's preparing to sell their business for a significant sum. We're talking about potentially £100 million next year. And we're talking about how they might invest their money. And he said, yeah, I know I'll do your boring stuff with you, but I really want to put some money into something that's interesting and keeps me interested and engaged. So I said, as long as you're prepared to lose all of that money, he said, yes, I am, because I have plenty to go at. And I think that's one of the issues, isn't it? Because it's just this idea of using your wealth as an entertainment vehicle rather than, go to the casino or go horse racing or do something where you can have a real bit of fun. So putting it into markets, companies, structures, whatever, that it's just, it's vaguely interesting. It's dinner party conversation, and maybe you lose it all. It's an interesting dynamic. I find.
We've had this chat offline, Alan. That that is relevant though for that guy with that amount of money. Make sure you've just got your future secured at a very high spending level and all of that kind of stuff. And if that gentleman or lady wants to invest in stuff that is of interest, knock yourself out. Just go for it, but make sure you have all the other stuff parked first. I think that's the main thing that I wanted to get across here about these kind of footballers and cricketers. And I didn't realize cricketers actually make a lot of money. That's hard for me to believe, but anyway.
Well, top flight they do. It's a real disparity.
Cricket in Wales.
Yeah, they do.
Apparently.
I think this point, this comes to something that Andy's quite strong, and it's just letting clients, if they really want to scratch that itch, let them crack on and scratch that itch. All right, it's better if it means them following through on a financial plan where most of their money is invested in boring buy and hold, stare out the window for the next 3 decades kind of portfolio. Give them a little playpen they can play with, as Alan said, on the strict proviso that you could lose all of this. Are you okay with that? And if you do, it won't ruin this financial plan we built. But let them scratch that itch and get on with whatever they want to do.
I've heard different names for this over the years. Investing playpen, I think I got from Alan. I've also heard of it as a Rob account, which is like a rush of blood account. That's your Rob account over there. I prefer Alan's latest one, the Dicking Around Fund or the Dicking Around Pot. I think it's absolutely brilliant. You can have a Dicking Around pot, mate. No problem.
How much? It's your DAP, your DAP. Just dicking around.
Dicking around fund. I think it's absolutely brilliant. Money. And then who wants to own a dicking around fund? Nobody. It's just it's framed perfectly. But, oh my god!
But
I'm the owner of a dicking around fund. I think it's brilliant. Thank you, Alan.
But you can have one on the basis that you also have your
family fortress.
Your family fortress. That's what you have.
This financial is fortress.
You don't need to say financial.
Triple F. Yeah.
No, you don't need it. Trust me. That's extraneous. Superfluous. That's the word. Next, move on.
Look at you two. Are you Tudor thesaurus? Both of you. Well done. Next to you using a knife and fork. Okay, Mr. Hart, employing professionals.
Okay, yeah, somewhat. Allow me a brief story, but yeah, I've moved into a new house that's sort of been consuming my life over the last few months. So I actually viewed this house over a year ago. And when I viewed it, I liked it, but I thought it was too expensive. I put a lowball offer in, and then I ended up someone else bought it for a higher offer. And then I was viewing other houses, and I was always referring back to this one that, it's the one that got away as such. And then the person pulled out that put in the higher offer for what I thought was a sort of pointless reason. And since I've owned the house, I've realised that it was a pointless reason. But anyway, so I got a call from the estate agent, I think in March.
Well, go on,
the person pulled out, do you want to buy it?
What's the pointless reason?
There was no toilet.
It was an access reason, but I won't bore you with it. Okay. So then he said, it's available. Do you want to buy it? I said, yeah, I'm going to buy it. And then obviously ensued the painful process of dealing with lawyers and property and all that sort of stuff. Anyway, I completed in May and I decided to do the place up. So for the first time, I employed an interior designer, which I've never done before. I'm a single bloke, divorced. Obviously, I want the house to be nice for me and nice for my kids. I got a few quid to do it up, so I employed an interior designer. And I basically got out of the way. I allowed her to just send me links, buy stuff, and do it in the style that she thought would make sense. There's obviously a few, as I say, if I did it myself, I would have done it okay, but, it wouldn't have been as nice as it is now. So the point of the story is if you're going to employ professionals, let them do their work and, in the end, the result will be fantastic. So the result is great. The journey's been a little bit rough because obviously you're dealing with other people in the mix and then you've got builders and all that sort of stuff. But the destination is good in the end. I mean, a sort of funny story to it. I ordered these tiles online. I thought they looked horrendous. I thought, really, you're going to put these tiles into my kitchen? The tiles arrived. Me and the builder were looking at these tiles thinking, these are horrible. How are we going to lay them out? And he said, well, there's two options, Andy. You lay them out like bricks or you just lay them out like straight. And then we contacted the interior designer. We said, these tiles have arrived. She said, right, the way we're going to do them is herringbone. And his face dropped. He thought, I've never done herringbone tiles before in that order. And then he said, I'm going to have to charge you more, Andy. It's just going to take a lot more time. I'm only used to doing the bricks. So anyway, he sort of tripled the amount of time he's going to put these tiles in. He charged me a load more money. And then in the end, the tiles are, amazing. And they make the kitchen. Whereas obviously if I had that option myself and choice myself, I would have made a complete balls up. So the point of the story is if you employ professionals, get out of the way. Too many people employ financial advisors and then want to dabble and, blow up the plan. So the key is clients getting out of their own way. So I could potentially have been a bad client. Obviously, I'm rather disagreeable. So yeah, long story short, employ professionals and then get out of the way. My final topical tip is this episode is going out on Thursday the 31st, and yesterday was Mr. Warren Buffett's 93rd birthday. I'm a huge fan of Mr. Warren Buffett, so happy birthday, Mr. Buffett. 93. Let's hope you get to at least 115 and continue to share your wisdom with us every year. That's it. Back to you, boss.
That's lovely. He'll probably hear that.
Great stuff.
That means. Do you know that? Assuming he lives to be there on January 1st, coming up in a few months, is his sidekick Charlie Munger's 100th birthday.
Yeah,
I believe. It'll be 100 on 1st of January. So don't forget to send a birthday card.
Well, why don't we ask him to come on as a special guest?
I think that's a great idea. Andy, will you look after that?
You take care of it, because I know how good you are getting Nick Murray to attend events.
On. 6 degrees of separation. We said this business is 2 degrees of separation. Surely there's someone out there who's listening to this that knows someone who's not listening to this that knows who's the Charlie Munger.
He's got a Charlie Munger's a close personal friend. He must be to somebody.
Close personal friend. There we go. Get it in. Okay, good stuff. I think we've given the topical tidbits a damn good thrashing. Let's move on to the meat and potatoes of this show. We're already half an hour in. So this is a question that's been in our hopper for quite a while from Eamon Prendergast, a Trappist who's on Twitter as @financial118. And I'll read out his question because this is going to take up the next part of the show, and it's a subject that does need addressing. Most of you have experience of organising events/seminars. I'm interested in finding out how you would set up a seminar for, say, 50 accountants from cradle to grave. This may include how long the seminar should be, best way to invite attendees, where to post the event, the structure of the event, topics you would focus on. We're looking to add additional speakers which accountants would find interesting. How would you follow up after the event? Thanks, Simon. So multiple questions in there, basically. And it doesn't have to be for accountants. I think the lessons, and when I speak about this, I'll talk about this, the lessons of how to organise and then follow up on a seminar apply to whoever your target audience is. But just addressing the accountants part first, because that isn't the question from Eamon. Carl, you have experience of organising seminars for Metis Norway and also organising a seminar for accountants. Tell us, with your typical honesty, how that went.
So we did a seminar event for accountants. It's ages and ages ago now, so maybe 2016, 17, something like that, right? On the basis that let's gather a load of accountants, centres of influence, and then we'll get a load of business out of that. That was kind of the name of the game. And then I took a bit of advice from somebody else who had done stuff like this, and the kind of theme of it was there was new pension rules. I can't even remember what they were, but we were going to talk about the very, very technical stuff about that. And we got a kind of a well-known tax guy to do that part of the talk. And then we did the second part of the seminar was an investment talk, all right? And we didn't do anything about financial planning, and we didn't do anything about cash flow modeling or, stuff that probably most of the people in the room wouldn't have seen before. So we did that. We got because I think the technical piece was new and that the speaker was kind of well known to all of these people, we got a good crowd at it. Now, when I say a good crowd, we got maybe 30 to 35 accountants in the room. And for me, of all of the events that we had done, it probably just turned out to be the biggest damn squib. It was the energy in the room wasn't good. We had zero questions at all. And for me then afterwards, it wasn't that bad now, right? And look, you gotta. Here's one point that I probably didn't think about when I was talking about this. This is all the learning, isn't it? You got to make the mistakes, and your first event of all of these kinds is never going to be. You're going to be a little bit embarrassed looking back. So you just got to make the mistakes. So look, it probably did help get the Metis name out there, but what would we have done differently? We'd have definitely done some financial planning stuff, and I'm not sure the investment piece was relevant, was needed. However, looking back, do the accountants want to ask questions in front of each other? I don't think they do, for fear of looking like Jesus, I should have known that or whatever.
That's a really good point.
It's a really good point. Yeah.
So what we have done instead is we took a different. Now we do run loads of other events, which I can talk about if we have time later on, right? But for the accountants in particular, what we've done instead is we've gone to them one-on-one, okay, and we've said, look, we've got this Metis Life Plan. This is so for everybody else. That's cash flow modeling. Let us do one of these for your biggest client or one of your biggest clients or someone who's maybe coming to a transitionary point, i.e. selling a business, etc. We can do it. You just give us the details, but blank out names. We'll do it, and then we will present it to you. And almost all of the time, the accountant goes, oh, Jesus, this is brilliant. Can we do this for the client? I'll just ask the client, can I have permission to blah, blah, blah. And then we go and do the presentation, the Metis Life Plan presentation to the client and the accountant. So that's one thing that I would strongly recommend, and I think really, really, really does work. Of course, if you offer this to 10 accountants, you might get to do 2 or 3 presentations. So this is a numbers game because accountants, after all, are very, very busy. And also they don't necessarily think that we do the great work that we actually do. So that's our challenge, is to actually show them. So telling them I don't think is any good. You got to actually show them. And that has worked spectacularly well for us with a number of accountants. And we have lots of centers of influence now in the tax advice accountancy firms who just we need to go get a financial plan from Meadows Ireland. So that's one thing. The other thing that we've done as well is the old entertaining. So asking an accountant to a really nice golf course and say, bring 2 clients or bring 6 clients, and let's just all get to know each other first. We won't talk business. And then, that kind of positions it better for the client, for the accountant to be able to say to his or her client, to say, hey, what Carl does is financial planning. I've seen it. I think you need it. Now that you've met him, he's not an axe murderer, or for any of the other metas, people in that might be playing golf. So that's worked really, really well for us. Now we are looking to try and kind of bring that maybe not necessarily exclusively to golf courses, but to do other events. So we have other things happening on that front as well. So look, that's kind of my experience on it. I would say spending a lot of time, money and effort into doing a big accountancy seminar might not be the best way forward for you. But hey, that's my experience. I'm sure there's plenty of other advisors out there who are going to tell you that that's all they do and they smash it out of the park and it's absolutely brilliant. So like this is the thing. You got to find your groove. You got to find your way forward. So in summary, Eamon, if you are going to run this, definitely do a piece about financial planning, but link it to a technical piece that they do like, but don't expect a lot of engagement. That's my final point. So, Andy, you're obviously doing mega events in terms of humans under management, probably the best known financial advisor event in the UK. So, what's your take on this and running events in general? What are the main themes people should be looking at?
Your last statement will definitely be a YouTube short. Thanks for that, Carl. Just to follow on from a point that you made, Carl, about showing your work to accountants. I've done this about 3 or 4 times. So I take on a new client. I said, you have an accountant? They say, yes. I say, what's the details? Are they quite proactive? And then I say, can I contact the accountant and say, like, we're working with you collaboratively? And I ask the client permission to share the financial master plan, which is the sort of cash flow output. And I've emailed it to accountants, and it's like, I think it's like the most beautifully, presented 15 pages of pure financial planning wonder. The accountant is zero interest in it. I don't know if they feel intimidated. You expect them to see it and go, wow, this is fantastic. All of our other clients need this. I need this. I've had not too good success with that. So if anyone's thinking about doing that, tread carefully.
Just can I just jump in on that one before, and Nick has a point to make as well, but I think that's pretty pointless sending a 15-page document out, because if I got that, I'd probably delete it, and got lots of beautiful stuff.
What I'm saying, Carl, is I'm doing that work with that client anyway. I'm just involving the accountant to be collaborative with it, to show that this is the overall situation, and invite them to the meeting, Andy. Yeah. I can have collaborative meetings.
Yesterday, I had a HSE consultant and his wife, who's been a client of mine for years and years and years, and his accountant came to the meeting, and it's amazing. Like I think the client now has a lot of trust built up in both of us, but a lot of the meeting is me talking to the accountant, with the client couple are beside us, and they're just delighted that, hey, I've got these 2 guys,
brilliant.
in my corner
good
here.
People
But I'd say
when
I say show the work, emailing a presentation or sending screenshots from Void, that's not going to work. But anyway, sorry for the interjection. Nick, what was your point on that?
No worries, Carl. Yes, my point is that I think a static financial plan doesn't ring anyone's bell, really. And if you're going to get cash flow across to accountants, I've got one accountant introduced, this lady in Berkhamsted, and she of course, accountants deal with limited company business owners, and for me, that's the ideal target market. Limited company business owners, ideally husbands and wives, right? And if you're working with those kind of clients doing cash flow, get, as one of you, the two of you alluded to, they get the accountant in on the annual planning meetings. And this lady, this accountant, she loves it. if she can see the cash flow modeling happening in real time because we share the screens and everything, then the accountants get engaged. I think a flat PDF necessarily won't do it. And that's definitely something I would do if I was running a seminar or a webinar with accountants as the audience. As you said, Carl, give them some technical stuff they can go and use. Remind them about the lifetime allowance going, remind them about the annual allowance in the UK now being 60k, because some of them won't know. Talk to them about relevant life policies, just give them some stuff. And then I would then, for the second half of the seminar, I would pivot to a live cash flow demonstration of Mr. and Mrs. Company Owner, because accountants are numerate, obviously, and the better accountants they'll be doing cash flow for their clients' businesses. And all we're doing is we're doing exactly the same for the business owners themselves. We're doing the cash flow and build a plan live. That's what I would say. If an accountant doesn't respond to when they see it in the flesh and a plan being built for their clients, then I would suggest that accountant.
We should probably get back to seminars and webinars. Are you talking about just dealing with accountants?
Yeah, but the question was about.
Have you not had your Weetabix today, Alan?
No,
he's not spoken for 10 minutes. He's having withdrawal symptoms. Okay, fine. So,
organising events and seminars.
Right, back to me. Okay, so
you organise events that are sort of business to business, don't you? So talk us through that.
Yeah, I organise business to business, so financial advice. I've never done a client event, and I probably will never do one. I might do an event with Maven Money, which is my podcast. But anyway, so I've done events for sort of two different brands. So the Vointist user group, which started in December 2011. And then I've got Humans Under Management, which started in November 2017. Just a brief sort of story about this, like business stories. I remember I sat down with it wasn't really going to be a potential client, but a prospect, but I pretty much knew I wasn't going to work with him. Anyway, he sold his garden maintenance company for 45 million. And he was a slightly older gentleman. I think he was about 75 when he sold the company. So I sat down with him just to have a general chat and things to avoid or whatever. And I thought he was going to be quite confident, quite arrogant or whatever. He said, Andy, I set up this business 50 years ago with one lawnmower. And it just hit me like at the start of the meeting. He was very humble that he's just built this business over time. And it was the same with I sat down with the lady that sold a load of nurseries. And she said, Andy, I set up this business 30 years ago and I started off with, one kid. And I've just built it up, and it was in my house, and then I rented it, a local place, and then I built it. So I love the stories of business that started off with, humble beginnings as such. So my tenuous link to setting up events, the first event I ran that weirdly Nick Lincoln was at, was in December 2011 in my old office in Pinner, Evans House. And I think there was about 10 of us there. And I've got the list of attendees actually, because I keep quite good notes of things. So anyway, the people that were there, I'm going to read them out now, was me, Simon Graves, Nick Lincoln, Les Conway, Stuart Poonawala, Bob Freeman, Graham Foster, Tony Clarkin, and John Scholes. Do you remember this event, Nick?
I do indeed. Okay. Can we get back to seminars, because otherwise Alan's going to fret. So can we talk about seminars again? Quick,
Carl. Were we not invited to that event, Carl? Or we were, and we said
these were the good days. These were the clean days.
Anyway, okay. So moving on, he was
still finding his way.
Some further information. So yeah, I've been running financial advisor events, and the main thing I run is Humans Under Management. This year in SA, coming up later this month, is the 12th show I've run, and in London it's going to be the 13th. And events are hard and challenging. They're expensive. There's a lot of work that goes involved in them. Since I've been set up Humans Under Management, I've booked 150 speakers. So you've got to book speakers, which is challenging in itself. You've obviously got to sell tickets. You've got to find a venue. You've got to worry about logistics. Timing is important. Some specific points to his question. Yes, I use Eventbrite. Yes, you should use LinkedIn. Yes, you should use Twitter. I use PayPal on the back end. Events are challenging but rewarding. So I'll continue to run events. Is it over to you, Nick?
It's over to me, I think. Yeah. Okay. Thank you guys for your input into that. So I don't do seminars. I haven't organised a seminar for either my clients or for other advisors. Really, I get involved with Andy with the Vointist user group to an extent, and that's now a webinar, and that's really what I yes, I know, Carl, I can feel a part of you dying inside, and Alan, maybe you as well. If I was to do anything, I would now do it as a webinar, not a seminar. I think the days of unless you know bigger firms, maybe you can do something. You do your golf days, I totally get it, fine. But I think for the lifestyle financial planner, webinars are the way forward. And Phil Bray, who does listen to the show, runs the Yardstick Agency, a well-known marketing brand in UK financial services. He's written 2 really good long forms on how to organize a webinar. Not a seminar, but a webinar, and I'll put links into them. And actually, it's an object lesson in content marketing from Phil, which you'd expect because he's a marketing expert. Because he's given chapter on verse. The first piece is how to organize a webinar. Everything you need to do. So he mentions Eventbrite, he mentions LinkedIn, he mentions upgrading your Zoom package. Don't run it as a Zoom meeting. You have to buy the webinar package, which is about £600 a year. It just works way better if you do that. And then the second long form piece that he wrote is the 10 mistakes that you should avoid when doing a webinar, which is really the same article, but just rewritten. Really good. And you read this and think, crikey, Phil here has given away everything I need to organize a webinar. But it's subtle content marketing, because I think a lot of people will look at this and think, Jesus Christ, there's a lot of moving parts here that can go wrong. I need to turn to an expert to organize this webinar for me. Who's the expert? He's just demonstrated his expertise. It's Phil Bray at the Yardstick Agency, who makes one oblique sales line in it and says, of course, if all this is too much for you, you might wish to outsource the organizing and running of your webinar to people that know what they're doing. So it's very subtle. So I would look at that. I'm just conjuring with the idea. I might run an annual webinar for my clients, which will just be to talk around the investment fund, running the portfolios, maybe do it in January each year, looking back over the last year. But of course, as a one-man band, I would need to get a third party involved. If you're doing webinars, don't do it by yourself, because you've got enough going on with the presentation. You have to have someone looking at the chat, looking at the questions, doing the housekeeping and so forth. So I don't know if maybe Dimensional would step in and would give a 10-minute overview of where the markets have been over the last year or so. And I know you're thinking, well, Nicholas, that's kind of counterintuitive to your core message, which is don't focus on the investments. But I just think once a year, just saying, well, what's happened? Just going through the portfolio, just going through the 13,000 great companies. I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there. It's probably because I read this article and it's front of my mind on how to do a webinar, and I haven't done a webinar and I want to do it. I like
that idea, Nick. And look, there's no part of me thinks that it's not the way to go is to do webinars going forward. We're definitely looking at them. And throughout COVID, we did a number of webinars that I hosted, and we got actually loads of people on them. So I'm not against that idea at all. I'm just a little bit old-fashioned in that I love pressing the flesh, and I love just meeting people face to face. So, but I do understand that there is another way, and I'm not convinced it's a better way, but there's another way. And of course, we should be exploring all of the ways. So, yeah, I like that idea, and I do like the annual seminar about investments. I think that's a really great idea, actually.
Yeah, and so I know we have some SJP listeners to the show, some SJP Trappists, and of course they are the past masters at organising physical seminars. That's one of their cachets, isn't it? They'll hire a country pile and they'll talk about inheritance tax planning, get a third party in, the kind of octopuses of this world. So they'll know it. They'll have it nailed down. But with SJP, it'll be a manual. Everything will be process driven. If you want to organise a seminar, practice head, this is what you do and this is how you do it, and you do not deviate from that. So there's different ways to do it. Alan, you don't particularly shoot me down if I'm wrong, you don't organize seminars per se for your clients, but you attend them. What are your takeaways from a good seminar or a bad seminar? What would you avoid, or what would you aim for?
All right, I mean, just some random thoughts is listening to you guys just chat this through. Interesting, just one thing, Nick, on the SJP thing. Famously, and I hope I'm not misremembering his name, I gather the most successful SJP advisor ever is a guy called John Cross, who famously just had a chauffeur. He was driving around in the back of his Bentley, and he'd be sitting on his phone, arranging appointments. And he was the seminar king. He would just organize seminars. In fact, I think on a podcast that we've kind of chatted about this briefly before in a previous episode. A guy called Colin Lawson, learned a lot from him. This guy, Colin Lawson, runs a firm, Equilibrium, up in the Northwest, hugely successful firm. And then Colin jumped on that particular bandwagon, and built a lot of success as an independent practitioner through seminar selling. And you're right, the hook. The interesting thing is finding a hook. what's going to be interesting to get people to come along to. And what we recognize is Middle England hate inheritance tax. That's just the thing. So doing a seminar on financial planning, no one really knows what financial planning is, or investment management. Well, it's vaguely interesting, but not really. But inheritance tax was a great way of getting people along. And they organized a lunch, and it was a pure numbers game. And again, this is public information. I'm only sharing this because I heard Colin speak about it. It cost about 10 grand an event, but you play the long game and you were making whatever, you would make your money back. What I have heard, again, anecdotally, I'm sure there's exceptions to the rule. What I've heard recently is it doesn't really work so much. That as a process has been really exploited over the years, and now those kind of Middle England people in the nice postcodes up and down the country have been to so many rubber chicken lunches that they've probably had enough, and they've been sort of they're probably engaged with a financial advisor. The majority of people who are ever going to do it probably have by now. So there's a definite move, and it's still expensive though. In-person physical events are still pretty expensive to lay on, to rent a nice place, lay on food, drinks, all the follow up. So I gather that is moving increasingly to a digital outcome, which of course the costs are a fraction, and you still get quite a few people showing up. So I think that's quite interesting. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of these things are personal views. I just personally am not somebody that attends live webinars very much. I don't know. So then I think that no one else does. Although I have participated we mentioned a couple of weeks ago, I was in a live event with Stuart down in Australia, and I think it was 60 odd people, other advisors. I did one with Lee Robertson of Octo last year. There was 120 something advisors live on that at a particular time. So obviously as a medium webinar, like live webinars, and again, the article which I read briefly before that you shared, Nick, that Phil Bray talks about, is if you're going to do a webinar, do not do a pre-recorded. The temptation is to pre-record it and then just sort of publish it. But he said, no, that's missing the entire point. It needs to be live, so you have people asking questions live, and no one wants to show up at a particular time to watch a video which they could have watched on YouTube at any time that they want. So some people will, some people do, not particularly. For me, I think going back to Eamon's original question, when he talks about, he's looking for the kind of cradle to grave or the soup to nuts idea. How do you set up a seminar for, say, 50 accountants? The first question I'd be asking is, what are you hoping to achieve?
Right, 250 is where you start.
Well, exactly. But what are you hoping? What is the actual desirable outcome of doing this? Because to my mind, when I see that, I just think, God, that is just a world of hurt in terms of work, organization, reputational risk, but getting it wrong. Where do you get the people? So, what are you hoping to do that you couldn't do on a one-to-one? Just kind of tying a bow on this, going back to Carl's original point, and I think Andy mentioned this as well. To some, Eamon specifically mentioned accountants being professional advisors that a lot of our clients also have, as well as us. A classic thing is, question to everyone listening to this: if they're practitioners, practicing financial planners right now, or they're working in financial planning practices, do you have a list, names, contact details, email addresses, all sorts of points of communication of every single one of your clients' accountants? Do you have that on a database, on a schedule? And are you communicating with them on a regular basis? Because I'd be doing that. I'd be just setting up a specific targeted newsletter of some description, finding high quality, relevant information, and just drip feeding that no less than a monthly basis to all the accountants of. And you'll determine over time, if you check your downloads, check your open rates, check your things you'll click through, who's actually reading this stuff, you will automatically identify accountants who are specifically interested in the work you do. If you do like a mass market shotgun style approach, I'm going to invite 50 random accountants or 100 or 200 random accountants, it's going to be a mixed bag. And as Carl experienced, you might get a bunch of them show up on a day and they might not really be engaged. You might think they're going to get free CPD or a free lunch or a free breakfast or something. So I'd be trying to identify those that are, in any group of accountants, a group of anything, there'll be some who are specifically interested. So I think that's what I'd be doing first of all. What is your desirable outcome? And I presume it's to open up professional relationships with third-party professionals who can, you can mutually refer clients across. So I think I to me, the simplest way of doing is having a high quality communication process. And maybe then once you've identified those and you've been communicating with them for 6 months or so, then do a poll. If we organize a webinar, would you be interested? What are your key subjects that you'd be interested in? What sort of time of day would you like? Would you like an in-person event? Would you like a webinar? And you get the feedback before you actually do it. You kind of sell the product before you actually create it. I think that would be one of the things I would do.
Okay, that's interesting. I think the webinar thing, you can expand out. I know, and Phil Bray mentions this in his piece, is that if you're doing a client webinar and say it's about just looking at the one fund and looking under the bonnet and getting a third party in to talk about it, because you can't just be you talking in a webinar. You have to have at least one other third party, if only because it breaks up the monotony of your voice. So you get dimensional in and they talk, and you put the invite out to your client bank, but you put it, he says, put it out to everybody on your MailChimp database. I've got this newsletter that goes out once a quarter, and I've got a few hundred people on there now who aren't clients of mine. They're just people who've subscribed to it, and they're accountants of clients. Just put it out there, because the webinar is yes, you're going to talk about the investment, but you're going to tie it into the fact the investment just drives the financial planning, and you maybe just do a quick run through of the financial planning software, just show a graph or two on the webinar, because some accountant might be looking and thinking, blimey, that's really good. This guy's not just flogging pensions or what have you. And the thing with the webinar is you can put out 1 million invites. It costs you the same if you put out 2 invites. It doesn't matter if they all turn up or they don't all turn up. The cost, the cost is going to be capped. Whereas with the physical event, I've got the Grove Hotel up the road, which is lovely, right? It's a proper swanky place with a golf course that has been on the PGA Tour. I mean, but Christ knows what that would cost to book. I would just be, how do you get the return back on that? I do not know. And how do you measure it? So I'm definitely on the webinar. I think, Andy, you had a digit. Were you having a fit, or was your digit raised?
Are you still banned from the Grove, Nick?
No, they've given me, as long as I can't wear that dress. It's got to be longer. It's the hem length. What's the problem? Thanks for raising that. Good man.
Yeah, the Grove is wonderful. I would say to the is Eamon, don't think of this event as a one-off. That will be disaster. Like, your first event will be probably terrible. So you've got to think this is now your new way of operating. So don't think of it as a one and done. Your second event will be way better. Then your third will be better. So yeah, I would stick to this rather than just thinking this is a one off. So maybe even your first event, maybe try and get 10 in a room, build up to 50. So try and embrace this as part of your new marketing strategy rather than a one-off.
50 is brave as well. I mean, getting 50 clients in a room is brave. 50 accountants. I mean, I doubt there are 50 accountants in Hertfordshire that you really want to deal with. So I would say get 10. Get 10.
Yeah,
that's probably going to be a real work of love. Guys, we've given Eamon's question a damn good thrashing there. Are we comfortable to move on to the next segment of the show? Because I can see in my little Nest camera on my screen that Posty is slogging up the mansion up the drive to Lincoln Lodge, and she's got a bulging sack of Trappist questions. So let's have a look and answer 2 more from our beloved Trappist. And who is this first one from? Let me quickly open this up. This one is from Mr. Nick Miles. He's not on Twitter, but he's on LinkedIn. Nick Miles, and he says, oh God, Consumer Duty. Just been to a money marketing interactive event. I'm sorry to hear that, Nick. I hope you're recovering. And a session on Consumer Duty by Simply Biz. Having worked on this for some time, the Simply Biz presenter said he has a refined Consumer Duty proposition for member firms for the implementation in July. This question was obviously posted a few months ago. The Simply Biz guy is on version 27 of their Consumer Duty proposition, 47 pages long and 13,000 words in length. Is this long enough, do you think, joking, for the attention of Lick Lincoln? A really great podcast. He has surged Trappist the last 9 shows in reverse order over 4 days and cannot get the Andy Hart tune out of his head.
Andy, the ultra-crepidarian Andy. He knows about everything, Andy. Can't be told anything. His name is Andrew Hart. Andrew Hart!
There you go, Nick. There's that earworm planted once again. Written in the back of a taxi on the way to a restaurant just outside of Cape Town. I mean, Consumer Duty, it's embedded now, isn't it? It's been and gone. I do think there's a lot of grift around it. Like all of these things, you get the grifters coming out with their 13,000 words on Consumer Duty. I can see if you're a brand or a fund manager, you probably do need a £13,000 Consumer Duty manual, because I think Consumer Duty hits you straight in the nutsack. If you're an IFA and a well-run IFA firm, I don't think you need to be spending that much time on it. He said, once again, poking the bear and asking for the FCA to give him another visit. I'm happy to move on to the next question if you are, gents, unless you've got something to add. Okay, silence is golden. The next question, who is this from? This is from a guy called Joel. Doesn't give his surname or his first name. It could be Billy Joel, for all I know. The piano man could be a Trappist. He's on Twitter as at JEU1985. Oh, God, feel free to paraphrase what I've written, as I'm not professional. I'm a teacher. We have a teacher listener. I'm a teacher and I have a buy-to-let. I have an accountant that sorts out my self-assessment and manages and an estate agent manages the property. Over the last 7 years, with my various expenses, I've paid little to no tax. A colleague is moving schools and wants to rent his current home out. As I think you've got us confused with an accountancy podcast, Joe, but we'll crack on. He wants to rent his current home out as the new school is going to provide accommodation for him. He's spoken to an IFA who was a friend of the family, who has said he should set up a limited company to get him tax benefits. I did ask him, did the IFA ask about his aims, goals and aspirations? And he'd hope he would. Apparently not. The IFA did not do this. I said, as a lowly teacher, he should just do what I did, get an accountant, and you don't need the hassle of a limited company for your property, since his main salary would be teaching. And if he keeps good records, near the end of the tax year, if he gets to higher tax, he can load up his pension. So the question he's asking is, if you have one buy-to-let property, or maybe even two, do you need to set up a limited company to manage so this really is an accountancy question. I'll go first, and you guys chip in. Rule of thumb seems to be, if you've got like 5 or 6 buy-to-lets, the tax situation tends to favour having a limited company and putting the properties within that frame for various reasons. And I'm not going to go into the corporation tax versus income tax and everything else, but if you've got one buy-to-let, I don't think you need to set up a limited company to put the buy-to-let within. Guys, any views? Andy, you've kind of dabbled in property to a degree.
Yeah, no, I agree. If you've just got one, it's massively overcomplicating it, especially if he isn't too financially savvy. So yeah, probably, again, this is not advice, but proceed with the way that the questioner was recommending. Anyone else?
It's a strange one. I'm just reading through the question. I mean, he asked a question right at the end, talking about the setting up a limited company or not. Was this relatively sound thinking, i.e. what Joel has said, or are my suspicions that this IFA was trying to get a quick buck falsely hurled? I don't know what quick buck the IFA was going to get by suggesting setting up a limited company. There's no sort of quick win on that particularly. Setting up a limited company doesn't cost very much to do, and you can do it yourself, or there's generally the remit of an accountant as opposed to an IFA. You know, the bigger question is, it's a strange one because the question is really around a transactional issue. I've got this asset. How should I own it? Now, the bigger question is, well, why do you want to own it? In what context do you continue to own it and all that, which is a proper, a real lifestyle financial planner type question. But it's really, if it's just, I'm a teacher, I'll be given a property to live in, and I've got my house, and should I just rent it out, and what should I do? So that's fine. So it's a transactional question. And there's a far bigger issue around, the role of an IFA, if at all, in this particular issue or question. So
try and keep it simple, basically. Yeah,
keep it simple, and exactly right. And and I hear this quite a lot. And this whole buy-to-let thing, from what I can see, is just kind of collapsing in the UK.
We've not even seen the start of it.
Everyone that I know,
till the rates go to 8 and 9%.
Absolute shambles.
It's going to be horrendous.
Everyone I know that owns buy-to-let property, or the majority of people, are just trying to get rid right now.
It's going to be horrendous.
And so owning one company, which is actually the whole other thing with that, is that was his principal private residence by the looks of things as well. So he owned that, as is where he lived. So setting up a limited company, no, don't bother, waste of time. But I think that is there's a bigger question there about the role of advisor and the role of an accountant.
Carl, why are you chuckling? Come on. What's the chuckle for?
Alan is talking away there, kind of not really answering the question. Then in the background, Andy is going, "This is horrendous. This is going to be."
The buy-to-let. We've not seen it. It's just
anyway. My solution is that we know a very good advisor called Eamon, who's very well connected to loads of accountants. So I think we should put Joel in touch with Eamon, and there's the solution, and there's the answer to the question.
He can go along to the first seminar. He can be one of the 10. He just needs to find 9 now.
No, Joel is a teacher, not an accountant, so he won't be one of the 10.
He can rock up.
Come
he
on,
can bring his
get
mate.
with the program. Are you not listening? Come on.
Right, good stuff. And Dan Trappist, if you've got a question, as ever, do post it in the pinned tweet. There's a link in the pinned tweet. Do we call it tweets anymore? The pinned X at the top of our X profile. You can submit your questions there, and we will get round to answering them. We still got about 15 in the hopper to get through, so just bear with us. Okay, we're now at, God help us, 64 minutes in. Let's move on to Culture Corner. Wow. Okay, Mr. Hart, Sleep Eye Watch. God, go on.
Yeah, this is sort of like a tech culture corner. So I've just become a lot more intentional with tracking my sleep. I've had an iWatch for years, but I haven't activated the sleep app. I think Alan's done this and spoke to me about it. So
what's an iWatch? You mean an Apple Watch?
Yeah, it's called an iWatch, no? An Apple Watch.
No,
iWatch.
it's not. It's not, right.
Of course it's called an iWatch. Okay, so I've got an iWatch.
Go on.
I've activated the sleep app via the health app and my watch. So I now sleep with it and I track my sleep. I think it's bloody brilliant. I've basically got a sleep coach now. Digital sleep coach. So if you haven't activated it, I recommend doing it. It means you change your behaviour a bit because you've got to charge your watch before you go to bed and all that jazz. But yeah, it's all good. You've been tracking your sleep, haven't you, Alan? By the Apple Watch?
I have for years, yeah, but I've got an app. I'm just trying to look it up.
A separate app that's into it.
While Alan does that, it's okay. So you're tracking your sleep. So what?
No, it's good. It's good.
Useful.
You I mean, it has a single biggest impact on how you operate through your day.
How you operate your life, yeah. And obviously, if you go to bed with lots of stuff in your mind, that will come out in your sleep pattern.
There's an app. There's
alcohol, etc. I've
tried loads of them. Sleep Cycle is the app, and it's linked to your watch and all that stuff. And it becomes a bit an obsession because you wake up in the morning. The first thing I do in the morning is check how good a sleep that I have, REM, and then you get nervous about how if you didn't have a good sleep, you think, oh shit, I'm gonna have a bad day then. So that creates sleep anxiety. Then you don't sleep properly, and the whole thing.
So if you have an Apple Watch and iWatch and you've not yet done this, I recommend doing it. So you have to go out of your way. It's a little bit of a setup, but once you've done it, it's basically seamless. It's absolutely brilliant.
You sleep with the watch on.
Sleep with the watch on. Right. So you're not doing it, Alan. And Sleep Cycle.
I am.
Sleep Cycle is an app that I used to put under my pillow. Now, this is all done seamlessly via the Apple Watch.
No. It's that as well.
It's freaking brilliant. So if you haven't done it, do it. And I know loads of trackers.
Okay, but you know when you wake up and you're having a good night's sleep because you feel shit.
It's just data, my friend.
But you want the data to be telling you.
Yeah.
But it is interesting. Every time I spend any time with you boys, if you consume any alcohol, the sleep interruption is just nuts. Yeah.
So that's why I'm saying it's like a sleep coach. It's a subtle person that's telling me to live a good life, so I go to bed and get good sleep and wake up and confirm that. I find it interesting. It's data. It's health stuff. If you're interested in it, there's my 2 pence.
Magpie. Yep. Okay, fine. Thank you for that, Andy. So Kitsis, once in a blue moon, Michael Kitsis releases something of interest, and his episode 347 was the story of a lady who sold her RIA business. RIA is broadly the equivalent of IFA in this country. She sold her business to United Capital, and then United Capital sold on to Goldman Sachs, which has all been a bit of a shit show. Don't really care. If it takes them down, all the better. And this episode's about her experiences, and trust me, not good. Once you sell to Goldman Sachs, you're in the Goldman Sachs mince machine. She was quite an advocate on social media. She had a brand on social media. She was on American finance TV shows and the web a lot. And Goldman Sachs said, no, you're stopping all that. So she's trying to extricate herself now from Goldman Sachs. So it's quite interesting how the United Capital sale has all unwound, as they often do. These massive companies buy up RIA firms, buy up IFA firms, and then about 2 years later, it's just a complete shit show. And I think what's happened in the States with this is a lot of advisors are leaving Goldman Sachs and taking their clients with them. There's been a massive hemorrhaging of assets, even though they've all signed these non-compete clauses and what have you. And it's an interesting link back to what and I'll put a link to it in the show notes, also a link to the show notes from episode 3 of Trap, where we discussed United Capital selling to Goldman Sachs at that time. And I think all of us took a somewhat less enchanted view of Joe Duran, who was the CEO of United Capital, all about the clients first. We're not the big Wall Street enemy. And then he flogs himself and his brand to Goldman Sachs and chemicals.
And interestingly, the next part of that story, Nick, is that Joe Duran is now launching another RIA of some description.
Who did? Yeah.
And the FinTwit community in the US seem to be pandering it once again. So that story is, I was a fanboy, not anymore.
Let's listen. I mean, United Capital, what he built up was a fantastic business. There's no doubt about it. And this lady who joined said it was just the best place to be. It was a really, really good, fun company. So that's that's to his immense credit. But once you sell your soul to Goldman Sachs or BlackRock or one of these, institutions. Good luck with that. Okay, my next culture corner, just a quick shout out, don't just comment on it, boys, but Debbie Condon runs a firm called Intuitive Support. It's like outsourced admin, outsourced power planning. She has a fantastic guide, which she updates every quarter or so on the providers and how they handle letters of authority. Okay, very mundane, down in the weeds, but it's a brilliant thing. If you need to know, do Scottish Widows take DocuSign? You look up this guide, they do, and she gives you the email address you send the DocuSign to. I put a link to it in the so-called show notes. Thank you, Debbie, for that.
Yeah, just to hammer that point home, Nick, if you don't have it, do download it. It is absolutely brilliant. So, definitely download that.
Okay, Mr. Smith, Rick Rubin, The Creative Act, A Way of Being.
Some of you will be familiar with Mr. Rick Rubin, one of the most seminal music producers of all time, really, having produced everyone from Beastie Boys, Eminem, through Adele, Red Hot Chili Peppers, Johnny Cash, a really, thoughtful creator. And so for many, many years, he's never produced any of his own stuff, but he just recently, earlier this year, has written a book. The book is called The Creative Act, A Way of Being. And I think it's a great read. He just talks about the very art, the concept of creating art. And he's making the point that it's not about, creating a song or music or a painting. A lot of the stuff we do, and the way I read it, without stretching the point too much, creating a real life, financial plan is art, is a creative process, which is, you create something out of nothing. You create something which exists where previously it didn't exist at all. And it's just the way it's a really poetic kind of, it's quite deep, quite soulful. And I would spend most of the weekend reading through it, and it's well worth checking out. All of us are artists of some sort, and it's a useful reminder of just create your best work, create your art in the way that only you know, the unique way that you can bring it to the world, and be proud of it and take your inspiration from so many other places. I really enjoyed reading the book, and I'm going to chuck in into my culture corner something else, which is a bit more direct, a bit less kind of ephemeral and kind of out there and arty, but is our old friend, Mr. Nick Murray, and his book called The Craft of Advice, Essays, 1995 to 1998. Now, this is an interesting one because Nick Murray's books are notoriously difficult to get hold of. In our group a couple of weeks ago, Mr. Hart posted something about this book, didn't you, Andy? You said this Craft of Advice, Essays. Yeah, you've got it there. So immediately you posted there, and I thought, I've never heard of that before. Go online, and it's real hit and miss. It's available. It was available on Amazon, right? It was available on Amazon secondhand for about 20 quid. So I buy it. Came from the United States. So I buy it, gets delivered about a week later. And I mean, there's another sort of side story because when you buy these secondhand books, they've always got a backstory. And there was a bookmark in it from some bookstore in Princeton, New Jersey.
Grab yourself a drink, a very long drink. It's story time with Alan Smith.
No, I love the fact that buying secondhand books, particularly Nick Murray books, they themselves have got a story. So this one did have it had a bookmark from, it's called Micawber Books, Nassau Street, Princeton, New Jersey. So I thought, I wonder who's been. And in the past, I've had them with highlighters and people got scribbled notes. The point of this being, it's a great book. They've captured all. He was writing, I think, monthly essays for a publication between 1995 to 1998. So obviously these are like 30 years old, some of these essays. One of the early ones, he was predicting, the demise of commissions, predicting the demise of so many things. He was very accurate in its predictions now 30 years later. And look, whatever we say, and people got different views, but the writing is sheer poetry. It's timeless. Just for fun, I went on again, looked to see if it was available again, and it's still available on Amazon secondhand, but now 60 quid. Someone else has posted it for 60 quid. So when you come across, every now and again, you get inspired to check out a Nick Murray book, just go online, look on Amazon, look at eBay, and you might get lucky. You might find one there and then, because there's no chance of you getting that in the normal circumstances. Speaking to Nick Murray International, whatever his company's called, and trying to get get them shipped through the normal processes. No chance. And then emailing him, "Dear Nick, how do I get access to your book?" It's not going to happen. So it's a fabulous read.
It is a great book. It's a great read. A good friend of the show, Dirk Groneveld, in SA, bought I think 3 or 4 Nick Murray books, and that one arrived, and it was signed by Nick Murray. So again, someone obviously got it signed by him originally.
The one I've got is signed by a Francois Tremblot. I mean, there's a whole story. We could get a cult thing, a subreddit.
Nick, you need to sign it when you sell it on Amazon.
Lick Lincoln.
And also, they're quite short chapters, so I just read like one every lunchtime. It's brilliant. I thought you were also going to mention the podcast that Rick Rubin and Rory Sutherland were on.
Well, I kind of dominated, but I have put out there is Rick. So Rick Rubin has got this podcast. It's quite a long name. I can't remember it, but the last episode was our dear friend Rory Sutherland. It goes on for 3 hours. Rick opens up with an open question, and then with Rory, you just basically once you ask an open question, you go away, you prep a casserole, you cook the casserole, you eat the casserole, you have a brandy and cigar, and you come back and ask the second question. And it is a bit like that, but it's a really, really good podcast. And Rick Rubin, crikey, he's talking on the podcast. He talks about Run DMC and Walk This Way and Aerosmith in 1986, I think it was. Just this introduced hip hop to the rock world, and introduced the rock world to hip hop, and just that one track would cement him. Rick Rubin as a sort of legendary producer. In that year, of course, he did produce the best ever thrash metal album, which is Slayer's Rain in Blood, which still sounds absolutely fantastic. And it comes in at 28 minutes. If you're going out for a nice romantic meal, don't put that on in the background, because it's over by the time the Tureen is coming out. A great guy. Okay, what else are we doing here? The Voice, Della Voce, Dan Sullivan, Benjamin Hardy.
Yeah, so I didn't put the book title, Nick, into the Culture Corner because you would have made a smart comment about it. You're going to love what the book title is. God. 10x is easier than 2x. So Dan Sullivan and Benjamin Hardy wrote this book. I didn't love it all, but there are definitely nuggets in it. I did, as usual, the Audible version of it. Some of it's not great, but there's some really good stuff. But one little nugget I loved, the way I think we all kind of have come up with our kind of explanations as to what does true wealth mean or whatever. And Dan Sullivan's is freedom of time, freedom of money, freedom of relationships, and freedom of purpose. And I just loved that. And he goes into the detail around that. And I'm definitely going to use that again. But I think it's probably more relevant, honestly, for someone looking to build a firm as opposed to solos. But having said that, there's stuff in there for everybody. So check it out. 10x, Nick, is easier than 2x.
I think Dan Sullivan's got a load of amazing content, and he is a close personal friend of yours, isn't he, Alan?
Obviously, yeah, he is.
Okie dokie, good stuff. Okay, I think we're there, aren't we, gents? I think we're clocking in as ever at the what's that? Just under the 80-minute mark. So let's tie a bow on this. Thank you as ever, dear Trappists, for your time. If you'd like to leave a review, that would be absolutely fantastic on iTunes. It's 6 out of 5, of course, and or on YouTube, where you can subscribe to us. But for the moment, I think we're done. From the Trap Pack, from the 3 other horsemen of the apocalypse, it's goodbye and take care out there, folks. Until the next time, take care. Bye.
Enjoy the World Cup, even the English people.
Roger.